Some sobering numbers coming out this morning when it comes to food insecurity in Canada. In its latest report card, Food Banks Canada warns that this country is at a turning point as poverty and food insecurity worsen in every corner of the country. Grades across the country have seen an overall decline. Only two provinces, Nova Scotia and Prince Edward Island, managed to increase their grades, while the rest of Canada, remained stagnant or got worse. Digging deeper into the numbers, the report found that more than 44% of people are feeling worse off now compared to a year ago. The percentage of people paying more than 30% of their income on housing hit 43.6%. With me now is Kristin Beardsley, the CEO of Food Banks Canada. Good morning. Nice to see you again. And I wish that we had better news to discuss. The first annual poverty report card is out. Talk to us about what you're seeing and how Canada rates among other countries.
Yeah, I mean, it's devastating, as you said. I wish we were talking about a decline in need, a decline in food bank use. But unfortunately, what we're seeing is what food banks knew. I mean, this report card isn't necessarily a surprise to us, but just a depth of need right across the country that unfortunately is not being met with a sense of urgency to deal with what we think is an urgent issue and a massive scale of an issue right across the country.
We highlighted some of the aspects of this report. What stands out for you?
What stands out for me really is that behind all of these numbers are real people and real folks who are struggling to make ends meet like never before. Families with jobs that should be able to afford food to put on their table. That stands out. The other thing I do want to point out, because while the scores are dire, there are provinces who are making legislative progress. As you said, Nova Scotia and PEI did manage to bring their scores up a bit. So I don't want to suggest that no one's taking action. There are provinces where we've seen, like BC, we've seen significant investments in housing. Federally, we saw significant investments in housing. And we want that momentum to continue because so many people are struggling right now.
Okay, so those provinces that are getting it right, if you will, you've sort of touched on it, but what more could they be doing? What could other provinces learn from them?
Yeah, so it's really deciding that it's an issue and a priority for your governments, but investments in three key areas, things like housing. We are so behind as a country in making the needed investments in affordable housing. So putting together a housing plan, looking at your social assistance or benefits rates, making sure they're indexed to inflation so that people aren't falling further and further behind into poverty. And then what we're suggesting for provinces that don't, put together a coordinated poverty reduction plan with targets so that you can hold your government to account and citizens can see that your government's taking action.
Ontario specifically got a D minus, the same as 2023. What is Ontario doing or not doing to receive this grade?
Yeah, so I mean, really what it comes down to is inaction. It doesn't feel that this government in Ontario is prioritizing poverty reduction. And we see in Ontario some of the highest costs. So the second highest housing costs, just next to BC. So we're seeing high costs, but it's not matching government urgency. It's not matching what appears to be a desire by the government to make sure that more folks have food on their table and don't rely on food banks. So it's really that inaction that's driving their grade into a D minus.
How does Canada compare to other countries when it comes to food insecurity?
Well, I don't have the data off the top, but I think we can all agree that when we look at the latest food insecurity data from StatsCan, and nearly a quarter of people in this country are food insecure, I think for most of us, that's a shocking number. When we think of Canada, we don't think that a quarter of the people, that includes neighbors, that includes people that go to our kids' schools, are worried about where they're going to get access to fresh, healthy food. They're skipping meals. We hear all the time about parents who skip meals so their kids can eat. This isn't the Canada that any of us want. A quarter of us now are food insecure. So I think we need to think about our future as a country and make sure that we're making these investments. These are investments in our future and our ability to thrive as a nation.
Kristin Beardsley is the CEO of Food Banks Canada. Appreciate you taking the time to speak with us about this report today. We're getting a better sense of how Canadians feel about the state of grocery prices. The majority believe costs at stores are still climbing, and about a quarter blame the grocery store chains. A new Leger poll found 64% of those surveyed feel the rate of inflation at grocery stores is getting worse. Only 6% thought things were improving, while 25% feel things are about the same. Now, when it comes to who's to blame, 29% blame attempts by grocery chains to increase their profit margins. 26% blame global economic factors. 20% blame the federal government.